And this is what, really it's what the name of the game is for us to get back to the point that we were at the transgression, even before the transgression. This is what we're looking for. And we learned in Genesis, in Bereshit 1:1, that all this happened so that the heavens could be reattached to the earth, so that the glory that we lost could be reattached to humankind. And this is what we're striving to do in our walk, is to bring the light back on us so that we have the glory that we lost restored to us. But we don't have to wait until we die. We can do that in our lifetime. Everybody, well, not everybody, but people are saying, when I die, I'm going to go to heaven and all this wonderful stuff. But you can have that relationship and you can have that restoration now. And that's something that we really, really need to grab onto. We're not alone. He's with us working, like I said, working continuously every step of the way. He surrounds us. He washes us. When we transgress, those transgressions, the worries that we have are washed away. And we can continue forward. And when we continue forward into next week's lesson, we'll discover that there's knocking that takes place. We've talked about the wilderness of sin representing clay. We're also going to find out that in alush, it means to knead, as in to knead dough. The knocking is not necessarily knocking at a door, but it also means to press in, and to work the clay, and that we're being worked. And we'll save that for next week when we get to those places. But any questions on these places?
As you were commenting about leading the sun god worshipers, so forth, I was thinking about the then totally new experience where they were no longer totally dependent on that, all the way to they had artificial covering during the day, the cloud, right?
Right.
And the fire by night, which is, it must have extended their days also. So there was some very unique provisions there, right? I guess since they were a roving camp and you wouldn't have any form of windows or other illumination, just a way to even motivate about, right?
Well,
or call to the tabernacle or whatever.
And we see them, to this point, the tabernacle hasn't even been built.
Yes, right.
But we've left a place, the first place that we came to that had water, we called Mara. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It means bitter. What happened at Mara? Is one of the great things that happened. They were complaining, how are we going to live? We don't have any water. This water is poison. We can't drink this. Now Elohim tells Moses, chop down the tree and throw it in there.
Birch or something.
And the tree gets thrown in the water and the water becomes sweet. Elohim takes care of them, and he takes care of us in our bitterness. And he can turn our bitter situations into sweet situations. But we have a responsibility in that too. Because when we come across a bitter situation, the first thing that human nature plays a part in this, the first thing that we do is we look straight at the bitterness. We look straight at the problem. It's going to ruin my life. My life is over. I'm going to go to sleep. I just want to sleep through it. We don't bother to take a look at what positives are there in this. And I'm going to work on the positives in this problem. Because I start working on the positives, pretty soon the negatives fall by the wayside. So that tree is always there to turn the bitterness into sweetness. Yeshua was hung on a tree that turned a bitter situation back into a sweet situation. And it's no different here, that we can find the good in the bad, but it takes perception to be able to stop looking at all the negative and look at the positive. And when we do this, when we consider that we have an Elohim that is a lot greater than our problems, and we look to Elohim, and we say, help me to see what I need to look at in this, the problem goes away. The next thing along the line, and we haven't got there, we're going to get there next week, but again, they were complaining they didn't have water. Moses struck the rock, and water flowed from the rock. So that did. Water flowed from the rock. Elohim will always provide when there's nothing.
Yes.
We will see nothing, but from the nothing something will come. And this is something that we're in a phase of these stops that we have to understand that He is working all the time for our benefit, constantly and continuously working and continuously. That surrounds us. This continuity is always with us. If we will believe and receive in His Word, and if we will walk with Him. Anybody else?
So this description of the father relationship, are we somehow in a different dispensation now where it's the punishing, trying father versus the nurturing, guiding, leading, nudging?
It's not really punishment per se. I mean, we look at the God of the Old Testament as being a cruel and harsh God that punished the people repeatedly, but it's not really punishing the people. I mean, I don't really punish my grandchildren. I explain to them where they went wrong, and I let them make the decision to do what's right. If He punished us every time we did something wrong, then we would be afraid of our Elohim. We have His Word that if we are sensitive to the Ruach, then the Ruach is going to say, that's not a really good idea. That's not a really good idea. You do it the third time, that's really not a good idea. By the third time, you're saying, that's really not a good idea. We call it conviction. That Elohim shows us that it's not a good idea. It's up to us to catch on, because He's not going to smack us upside the head and say, don't ever do that again, and then, He's made the decision for us. That's interfering with our free will.
Okay, I have a question. Okay, like you said today, we have the ability for conviction. They didn't, did they?
Well, they had spent 400 years. Well, depends on whose commentaries you look at. So they spent a long time in bondage.
Right, so
and they had lost the relationship that they had with Elohim.
Okay.
And this is why He gave them.
But they're getting back.
And they're getting back, but
The rest.
all the way there, they're being rebellious all the way there. So what is Elohim doing in the midst of this rebellion all the way to Sinai? He is taking care of them, taking care of them.
And in that process, though, just like when we're raising our children, we have to punish them sometimes to keep them on the right path, and that's what He's doing. He's not really being He's taking care of them, but in the taking care of them has to come discipline, right?
Did we punish our children, or did we discipline our children?
Well, discipline.
We discipline our children. I mean,
But if we didn't do that, they would not have been down, they wouldn't go down the right path.
some people punish their children. Some people throw their
Well, they
children in a
do.
closet
Well,
and don't feed them for months.
So,
But some people discipline their children and show them what's right, show them what's
well, the
wrong.
reason why I say is because you made a comment. You said that a lot of people say that God in the Old Testament was
Harsh
horrible and
cruel.
harsh. He had. I'm not saying that he was, but he had to be Because their eyes were so closed and so, you know, like you said, they'd been in bondage. And
Let's consider that. Let's consider that. Okay? Up until they reached Sinai, like I was saying, he took care of them. Turned the bitter water into sweet water.
Right.
Covered them in the daytime. Gave them light and warmth at night. Took care of them. They reached Sinai. And what happens? The glory of Elohim descends, and he speaks to the people, and he gives them the first 10 of the commandments. And the people can't handle it. They say, we can't do this. Moses, listen to Elohim for us, and you tell us what he says. Okay, so Elohim says, fine. He goes up into the mountain. He comes back down. Now he comes back down with the Torah. The Torah minus the book of Leviticus. Because they were already to be priests, a holy nation. But when he comes down, they're transgressing. Here is where you can say a punishment, or where the discipline begins, in that Moses breaks the tablets. They have to atone by drinking basically the golden calf crushed up in the water. Then Moses goes back up into the mountain for 40 days and comes back with the second set of tablets that contain the book of Leviticus. Why? Because now the people are going to have to make atonement for everything they do. Now they are going to be responsible for every mistake they make. And the consequences for these mistakes is death in most of the cases. Originally, we didn't have it. Do we have the book of Leviticus today? Do we? Melchizedek met with Abraham after the little ordeal with Lot, and Abraham pledged to Melchizedek a tithe, and they broke bread and wine together. Okay? This is, Melchizedek was the prince of Jerusalem, the prince, or the king of the city of peace. And Abraham broke bread and wine with him and offered him a tithe. Did he just offer him 10%? 10%? Did he offer him 10%? No. What he offered him, I don't know where I put it, it's over here. He offered him this. He offered him everything. Yod, we say means truth, power, and the ability, but Yod, the root of Yad, that means hand, but it also means all my strength, everything I am. He didn't offer just a tenth. He said, I'm going to give you everything. So I asked you about the Levitical law. Are we still under the Levitical law? We don't sacrifice animals because Yeshua took care of that. And Yeshua took us from a Levitical priesthood into the priesthood of Melchizedek, which we'll teach on this later down the road. But what did we do to enter into this priesthood? First of all, we accepted the bread. We accepted the wine. And we say, I am going to serve you with everything I am, in spirit and in truth, physically and spiritually. Shema Yisrael Yehovah Eloheinu Yehovah Echad was the first. Hear, O Israel, Yehovah our Elohim, He is one. And you shall love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, your mind, your strength. We give him everything. But part of the order of Melchizedek, the priesthood of Melchizedek, is that we also offer the same everything that we have to our neighbor, to love our neighbor as ourselves. So we don't have the Levitical law with us, and we are no longer bound to the Levitical priesthood. If we were bound to the Levitical priesthood, we would be in trouble because we don't have a temple in which to sacrifice bulls, remember the bulls, the rams, and the goats, which are a representation of Elohim and the redemption that he sent in Yeshua. So,
I misunderstood your question.
huh?
I misunderstood your question.
Yeah. So, that's where we're at. We are back in a condition that it's back on us, our responsibility to believe and to receive, our responsibility to follow the word, our responsibility to, as we say, Yehudim, to show gratitude and praise our Elohim. And it's our responsibility to worship in truth and also to worship in spirit and to understand what those things mean. I think I answered it quite. Was there a question?
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Anybody else? Just jump right on in there. All right. Well, next week I'm going to put a worksheet, or not a worksheet, but I'm going to put another handout like this together. But I'm going to bring a second handout. The second handout is just going to have the verses in Hebrew and English. Okay? So if you have them, bring your Hebrews letters books, bring your Proto-Hebrew pictograph books, and what we're going to do is we're going to write it up here, and let's get everybody to participate in breaking down
How we break down
these
what we
verses.
do.
We'll break down the verses together, and then we'll get the idea that we get as a group, and then we'll take a look at the handout and see how our ideas as a group compare to the ideas in the handout. And I think we'll find that they're very similar. Okay? But thanks again. I love y'all very much.
Love you.